You're all welcome to this press conference. I would like to start by recognizing the persons on the high table with me. I would like to start from my far left. I have Mr. John Bideri of the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. You're welcome. Sitting next to him is Reverend Thomas Njala, a PACJA board member as well. You're welcome. We'd like to recognize the presence of the programs manager of Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, Sam Ogala. And on my left is Bob Chimambo, a board member of PACJA. So you're welcome. Thank you. We'd like to welcome you all to this press conference, and it is hoped that our aims will be achieved as we go on. I'd like to start with Mr. John Bideri. Today, LIma Talks has entered the third day. What should Africa expect on the discussions on the INDC, and what should their demands on the INDC be?
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, INDC is, I would say, is a new concept that was developed or came up soon after, actually during the Bonn meeting. And in my view, it came up with an intention of distracting our negotiators who are already burdened with a lot of issues to do with the convention. And we are of the view that this is likely to distract our negotiators again to the extent that this new concept, INDC, is not yet understood by most of our negotiators. And this is likely to be another issue that is going to derail the whole process that the negotiators are already involved in. It is pushing for countries to make individually determined contributions on mitigation, and yet the convention places the responsibility to the Annex 1 countries. So it's being transferred also to the developing countries, which we think, in our view, is not proper. It's unfortunate that the African countries are being engaged in another futile exercise that is out of the convention. And therefore, to respond to your question, we are of the view that the developed countries, we cannot have a situation where, because of the pressures from developing countries, agreements on INDCs are hurriedly entered into without actually understanding the challenges behind it. And we are of the view that if any agreement has to be taken on, it must include all elements in the negotiations, including adaptation, finance, means, and implementation of technology transfer, among others. So this is what we think, and no agreement, no nationally determined scope of INDCs they must all be mandated to include all the elements as I've mentioned earlier on. Okay. So that's my thinking on that issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me turn swiftly to my right now, Mr. Chimambo. At this LIma conference, the African group of negotiators are putting on the table a proposal on the global renewable energy partnership. Do you think the African civil society is in support of this move? And if you are not, what are your expectations from this conference?
Thank you very much. African civil society are very much in support of this proposal, the Global Renewable Energy Partnership that the African group has put forward. In fact, it is in sync with the announcement of the Secretary General to the United Nations, which is called Sustainable Energy for All, launched in 2011. Now, it must be understood that renewable energy is key to poverty reduction in Africa. It is key to degradation, to stopping deforestation and degradation. Now, what do I mean? Africa is a land of smallholder farmers. And the problem we have is that our people do produce food, but there's no value addition in the foods for the last 100 years. So what we now need, in a nutshell, is to introduce energy so that at the smallholder farm level, so that our people can add value to the products that they produce. We don't want a situation where in Kenya you produce goods, fresh vegetables, and they're sent to Europe or anywhere else. But we want to add value at farm level so that more income goes to our smallholder farmers. And in that way, energy will be part of to create wealth at our farm level instead of exporting raw materials as is currently the case. Now, the other thing we must understand is that 90 to 80% of the energy of our people, especially in Africa, is from biomass, charcoal, firewood, etc. Energy or introducing of new renewable energy sources will relieve the pressure on our forests because our people now have access to renewable energy. And now we know that the potential, for instance, for small hydro power, for solar, is massive. Therefore, what we need in the context of climate change is that we need resources put into Africa to roll out either mean hydro, renewable, whatever, biogas, to reach the lowest of our farmers and our communities. We don't want a situation where the World Bank comes in, the biggest, they do like in Zambia, they do a big dam, only for electricity to go to the mines, but not to our people, and our people continue to degrade the forest. So in the last 100 years, the drivers of deforestation has actually been a policy failure by the World Bank, who create dams like Kariba, produce electricity, it passes over even our chiefs, whose land they've been, and it goes to do the mines and the corporate interest. So let's address the issue at a community level. Renewable energy for smallholder farmers, for the community on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. I want to go to Dr. Jala. For those of us who have been following the COP negotiations for some time now, your face has become synonymous with COP, having attended several COPs. I would like to have your view on this particular COP. Do you think it will be radically different from any of the previous COPs? And if it will be different, in what areas and what?
Yes, we agree that climate change has rocketed to the top of the global political agenda around the world during the last several years and in the last couple of months. However, it is a critical movement for climate negotiations here this week in Lima. The Lima talks are an opportunity for government to harness the momentum that has been growing around the world for months to addressing the global climate change crisis. However, in Lima, government can move forward quickly to finalize only the plans towards Paris. And this, the foundation of any agreement for Paris, has to be strongly built on Lima, on what we're going to be discussing this week, the proposals and the practical steps that we're going to be taking towards Paris must be built from Lima. And we will be further disappointed, and I must make that very clear, if Africa does not get a fair deal from the talks here this week. It will be a great disappointment. It will be a punishment, again, inflicted on the continent of Africa and its people for a crime that they have not committed. And I'm talking about environmental criminals who have committed crimes, and they are using the crime to punish the people of Africa. And we need to ensure that that is changed at this conference, at this conversation taking place this week in Lima.
Thank you, Dr. Jana. Yes. I want to go to Sam Ogala now. You are representing the African civil society at this COP. It's been said that a conference of parties without African civil society is actually a colorless COP. So we thank God that you are here. We are happy that you have the African civil society here represented by you. I would like to know, what are your demands at this COP?
Thank you, Atai. For us, African civil society, under the auspices of Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, I have basically demands, what we're looking out for in COP here in Lima. Just like every other COPs, we go with our demands, and the demands of the African civil society is a collective view of the entire civil society across Africa, emanating from the grassroots, the community. It's the voice of the poor and the vulnerable people across Africa. what we do here in COPs and other several meetings and international engagement as PACJA is to amplify the voice of these people that are most impacted by climate change on the African continent. Having given that, I would just mention a few of some of the demands that we came to LIma with, and we are looking forward to see that being realized in the next few days that the climate talk will proceed here in LIma. Basically, we are demanding that all governments commit to global emission reduction to the safest level. And our position as a Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance has been to well below 1.5 degree centigrade of the warming, even though what the IPCC is telling us that we've exceeded that. But again, if we did not insist on this demand, tomorrow these people will take advantage, especially the developed country, and move us from 2 to 3. And once it's 1.5, for Africa is times 3 of this global warming for us. So the impact is much more on the African people and the continent. What's another demand that we're looking up to or come to LIma with is the demand that all governments must put a stop to further delays and to take a decisive actions that will solve the climate crisis. Over the years, it's been shifting of goalposts from one COP to another with different names attached to it, Doha Gateway, and all those things. Even in Copenhagen, the civil society said that was where the hope was hanged. And so we're getting tired, running out of patience as far as Africa is concerned on these delays, tactics, and shifting of goalposts in developed country meeting their historic responsibility and being committed to solving this problem. Instead, from one COP to another, we see the impact of climate change being exacerbated across African continent. Meanwhile, it's not waiting for the delays on the decision to be taken that will impact millions of people across the continent. Another demand we're putting forward at LIma here is that government of the North, the developed countries and the NS1 countries, have to commit to deliver fully their fair share of the effort to solve climate change and ensure full payment of emission debt owed to the people of the South. We're also demanding that the governments of the South and of the developing countries stop following the same path of the profit-led, destructive high-carbon growth taken by developed countries that benefit only the elite. They have to start taking on fair share of the global effort and be unrelenting in claiming climate finances and technology from developed countries of the South. And so it shouldn't be business as usual in LIma. We have to define what we want as African government, being led by our African group of negotiators. We have to speak in one voice. It's part of the demands that we have to speak in one voice to actually push for the yearning and aspiration of the African people and who are mostly impacted. We also have other demands such as that of mitigation commitment by the government to be immediately translated into concrete policies for transformation of energy system away from the fossil fuel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right now, we'll be throwing the floor open for questions from the audience. We have room for 3 questions. Yes, have one. Okay. I'll start with you, and I look forward to a question from a lady. Your name, the organization you represent, and your question, please.
Alex Morales from Bloomberg News. Sorry, I'm not a lady. My question is, to whoever chooses to answer, I'd like to know a bit about different impacts you're seeing in your countries and what measures you're having to take to adapt to those impacts already.
Okay. Who wants to go first? All the questions? Okay, let's have the second question. Second question, Harrison. Okay. Your name and your organization?
My name is Harrison Tamfu. I'm a journalist of a PACMAC group coming from Africa. Now, from the delivery that the panel has given, I understand that the African civil society is here to ensure that an outcome that is very, very comfortable for Africa is achieved. What exactly would you expect at the end of this COP20 in LIma? Have you come here to talk and to live, or also to act? And as we've been hearing, if the civil society is demanding a text that will be the blueprint for a Paris COP21 in Paris, what is the timetable for this text? When do you want it? When should it be established? And when should it be studied? I think those are my two major concerns.
Thank you very much, Harrison. Yes, Zainab.
Hi, my name is Zainab Wandati, a journalist from Nairobi, Kenya. I'd like to know, to what level are you holding the individual governments responsible to take action against climate change, as opposed to just putting the developed countries on the spot? Given that you're the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, I'm sure you work with the African governments. How often do you get to have conversations about climate change with them? And do you have measures in place in which you're making sure that they are doing something about climate change as well?
Thank you. So who gives the first shot to the question from here? You want to go? Okay.
Thank you. I come from Rwanda, and I think I'll talk about Rwanda because you wanted specific challenges in our countries. First and foremost, Rwanda has actually been affected by climate change to the extent that we've had families being affected by floods, particularly those living in close to the marshlands. And these have had to be compensated by or to be moved by government to other areas at an extra cost that perhaps the government had not set aside in its own budget. We've had challenges of landslides. Rwanda is a mountainous country, and when it rains very heavily, some of the families that live on the slopes of the hills and mountains are also affected by those slides. And again, government is forced to intervene at an extra cost that perhaps could have easily been used for other development purposes. There's a general increase of diseases like malaria, and the government has, with the development partners, has invested a lot of money in providing mosquito nets to almost every family. And this is at an extra cost that perhaps could have been used for development purposes, providing social facilities, education, health, and so on. So these are all burdens to our governments. I cannot be able to quantify the figures, but I think I've got the figure somewhere. But it's going into millions of dollars every year, which is very expensive, to the extent that the government has had to set up a ministry that is responsible for disaster management and refugees. That tells you how the magnitude of the problem is, for a government to set up a ministry that will address issues to do with disasters. So those are the challenges that we are facing, and these are recent developments brought about by climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bideri. I believe Bob has some has a response for Harrison.
Yeah, just to add on what John has said, I did allude to the fact that Africa is a land of smallholder farmers. We depend maybe 80 to 90%, except maybe South Africa. We are all smallholder farmers. As I left on Saturday, I'm from Zambia. We are supposed to have had our rains in October. There was not even a drop. And if it continues into December, it means the planting period will have been passed. And then what will normally happen, as 2-3 years ago, is that when it comes, you have no more rain, but it happens in 3 months instead of 6 months. And therefore, it interferes with the growth of our staple food, which is maize. Now, the problem we have is that whereas in the previous years, you can have a drought or a flood over a long period, but this is occurring almost like every 2 years. Before you recover from the other one is on top of you. And that is putting pressure. Yes, we have also put up disaster management unit. I mean, you can only manage these disasters up to a point. So there's a lot of pressure on our physical budget every year dealing with these impacts of climate change, which we think droughts and floods are, case in point. And Harrison, what we expect, and I think it's important. I remember that when we were in Durban, or let me put it this way, when we were in Copenhagen, our colleagues from Europe, they would tell us that you tell your governments to do something about climate change and so on and so forth. And I remember that we said, hey guys, climate change is not AIDS that only Africa will be affected. It's not Sahel drought. This is going to hit everybody. So it's not about Africa. Yes, maybe we'll be impacted more, but sooner or later, everybody is going under. And I remember that we used the analogy of the Titanic. The aristocrats were on top of the boat. The poor paying guys were on the boat, and they started drinking water. Of course, they went first under, but the whole ship went under finally. And therefore, let's not just look at this as an African problem. It's everybody. I mean, Europe now is faced with the droughts every other year, Pakistan, everybody. So it's not an African problem. And in fact, the area that our colleagues, Western societies, you, the ordinary people in Europe, America, realize that this is not an African problem. This is a global problem. That you guys begin to put pressure on your corporations, the polluters, the majors. That's when the earth will be saved. It's not for Africa. Yes, we are on the bottom level. We are taking in water. We are having, but we also coming down with us. So the area you guys move on, begin pressure on your governments, is better for everybody else. Let me just add the issue of what we're doing to our governments. Exactly the point I've just raised. We just make sure that our government don't, they are not divided. You know, what happened in the previous COPs, that they speak with one voice, that we don't see one of them breaking from the ranks and doing things that are not in the interest of Africa. That is our role here, watch to grow, and we're making sure that that happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Because of time, we're going to just give Dr. Jala and Sam just one minute to round up and give us their closing remarks.
Thank you. For expectation from LIma, we want a blueprint right now. Now is the time. And investment costs moving from 100 billion to trillion by 2020. We are looking to seek for legally binding agreement because CSOs will not allow our people to be punished with injustice by environmental criminals, as I said, but we want to call for an investment target to move to trillion by 2020 for countries that have contributed too little to the crisis. We stand up for a fair and equitable climate deal in favor of Africa and its citizens. And let me say we call on other civil society here with us from other parts of the world to stand with us and the people of Africa to hold these criminals accountable using historical responsibilities. We need to ensure that they are held accountable.
Yeah, thank you, Babs. For us, I think we also want to put everybody, especially the governments that are party to the COP, on alert that for us, civil society, we are here and we will name and shame whosoever want to derail this process. Africa has waited for long. We can wait no more. And so any compromise, we will name and shame. As we've been working, even right, Zainab, as you asked, we've been working closely with all the bodies related, working on the issues of climate change in Africa, including working with the African Union, the African Group of Negotiators, the AMCEN, African Ministerial Conference on Environment, and the national chapters, because PACJA works in 45 countries in Africa with the membership of over 1,000 civil society organizations. So these at the country level, in the 45 countries we're working, are also working, holding their government accountable to some of the deals that have been agreed to, and also the minimal commitment they can do at the national level. And from the national level, we're taking it to the sub-regional level in Africa and also to the continental level. We're working closely with all the relevant bodies that are working in the process of this negotiation. And anything that will shortchange the common man, the vulnerable people in Africa, is not acceptable by us. We're here, we will name and shame, including even our own government, those who will want to compromise. even as much as we set our eyes, even on the developed countries, who has brought this problem that are being faced by us today, and we are bearing the brunt, especially African continent. So we are on alert, and let them be aware of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'd like to thank each and every one of us for coming here, thank the finalists and the panelists as well. And I want to say that Africa has spoken with one voice, and the demand is clear. Climate justice is a right and not a privilege for Africa, and the time for it is now. We invite you to join our press conferences and other programs as we go on. Africa is here, and Africa is speaking with one voice. Thank you very much.